Good morning, my lovely grade 4. How are you today? Hope you are all fine. Today we are gonna start in concept 4.1, which is talking about breaking down and moving rocks. So let's start. If you are moving on the beach, you will see your footprint behind you, right? Now, look at question 1. The footprint still be there to next day? What do you think? Right or wrong? Excellent. The answer is wrong. Because once the sea waves come on your footprint will disappear and it change. Now look at question 2. The shape of the sand castle still be there without it changing by hitting of sea waves? What do you think? Yes, the answer is also wrong. Because once the sea waves come on the sand castle will disappear. So we can say that everything is changing around us. And we have two types of changes: fast changes and slow changes. Imagine that you are sitting on the beach and you are playing with the sand. What will happen if you made a sand castle and then water waves came on it? It will stay without it changing, or it will disappear in few minutes. What do you think? Excellent. It will disappear in few minutes. So this is an example of fast changes or slow changes. Yes, sand castle is an example of fast changes. But what will happen if the water waves came on coastal rocks? There may be some little difference in their shape, but after many years. So what do you think? This is an example of fast changes or slow changes? Excellent. Coastal rocks is an example of slow changes. Now, look at these two pictures and tell me what are the similarities between them. Number 1, both have steep needle-like parts. 2, both have sloping sides or inclined sides at the bottom. And 3, water and wind create their shapes. There are 3 processes that have an important role in changing Earth's surface, and they are by order: weathering, erosion, and deposition. But what is the meaning of weathering? Weathering is the breaking down of rocks into smaller pieces by wind, water, and weather changes. Erosion is the moving of small pieces of rocks, sand, and soil to other places by wind, water, and gravity. While deposition is laying down of sediments after their erosion. And laying down means stopping moving of sediments. Here we have some notes. Number 1, sand is formed by breaking down of some types of rocks into smaller particles. 2, what are sediments? Sediments could be sand, rocks, soil, remains of plant roots, and remains of dead animals. Now we are going to talk about weathering, erosion, and deposition in details. Let's start with weathering. Weathering has 2 types: mechanical weathering and chemical weathering. But what is the difference between them? The main difference between them is in mechanical weathering, rocks break down into smaller pieces but they not change in their structure. While in chemical weathering, rocks break down into smaller pieces, but they change in their structure. So what's mechanical weathering? Mechanical weathering is the breaking down of rocks due to the effect of physical factors like wind, water, plant roots, and temperature. Now, we are gonna know how wind, water, plant roots, and temperature play a role in mechanical weathering. Let's start with wind. Wind pushes the sand from one place to another. Friction happens between sand and rocks, so rocks are broken down. Now let's know how does water play a role in mechanical weathering? Number 1, water runs over rocks. 2, water dissolves some substances in rocks. And 3, rocks are broken down. How do plant roots play a role in mechanical weathering? Number 1, plant roots grow inside the cracks of rocks, and the cracks here means openings. So cracks become wider, and then rocks are broken down. In this slide, we want to know how does temperature play a role in mechanical weathering? Number 1, water flows into the tiny cracks. 2, what will happen when the temperature gets very cold? Yes, water freezes, forming ice that expands and makes the cracks of rocks become wider. But what will happen when the temperature increases? Super, the ice melts or changes into water. So water fills wide cracks again. The cycle of freezing of water and melting of ice continues until rocks are broken down. Next, we have chemical weathering. And as we have said, chemical weathering is the change of the structure of rocks due to the chemical reactions. Chemical weathering happens due to the chemical reactions of rocks with some other materials such as number 1, water, 2, oxygen, 3, acid rain, and 4, acid produced by some living organisms. Now, let's know how does oxygen play a role in chemical weathering. Oxygen of air reacts with iron of some rocks, forming red-colored rust. And this reaction weakens rocks and breaks them down easily. Next, how does water play a role in chemical weathering? To answer this question, can you look at these two pictures and tell me what can you see? Excellent, they are limestone caves. But how they are formed? They form when water dissolves minerals in a rock. The dissolved minerals combine or collect again, forming new shapes as in limestone caves. Now, we are gonna know how does acid rain play a role in chemical weathering. Remember that acid rain means water plus smokes or water plus carbon dioxide gas. When the acid rain falls on rocks, it dissolves minerals found in these rocks, causing the breaking down of rocks. Now we are gonna know how do living organisms play a role in chemical weathering. Can you look at this picture and tell me what can you see? Super, they are lichens. But what are lichens? They are tiny plants, and they produce acids on rocks that dissolve minerals found in these rocks. So rocks will break down. Now we are gonna study erosion as we have studied weathering. We are gonna know what is it and how it takes place. As we have said, erosion is the process in which the small particles or sediments of sand, soil, and rocks are moved to other places by wind, water, and gravity. As we have studied in the luster, gravity pulls the objects down. So what is the action of gravity erosion here? The broken weathered rocks in a mountain can be pulled down at mountain sides by the effect of gravity. Action of wind erosion. Wind may be gentle or strong, but what do you think? Gentle wind carries sand for a short distance or long distance? Yes, gentle wind carries sand grains for a short distance, about 1 meter, while stronger wind carries them for a longer distance. Action of water erosion. Rivers and floods carry sand, soil, and rocks downstream. Sea waves pull sand away from beaches, and rain washes away the soil of farms that locate beside downhill. Can you remember what's the third process do we have? Super! The third one is deposition. Can you remember what's meant by deposition? Yes, it is the process of laying down of sediments after their erosion. And it happens by wind and water. Let's start with wind. Action of wind and deposition. As we have said, wind may be weak or strong. If the wind is weak, small sand dunes will form, like sand dunes on the beach. While if the wind is strong, large sand dunes will form, like sand dunes in Western Desert in Egypt and Rubel Khali in the Arabian Peninsula. Next we have action of water and deposition. When a river carries sediments meets a sea, these sediments are deposited there, forming something called delta, such as the Nile Delta. Now can you look at this picture and tell me what's delta, or takes the shape of what? Super! Delta is fan-shaped or triangle-shaped mass of mud and other sediments that forms where a river enters a large body of water. Now we are gonna know what are sedimentary rocks or how are they formed. Sediments are mixed with mud and remains of plants and animals at the bottom of oceans, lakes, and in deserts, forming layers. Over a long period of time, more and more layers press down, forming sedimentary rocks.